The original date for the lockdown, the nationwide lockdown to end was the 14th of April, which is tomorrow. But given that there are now over 9,000, there have been over 9,000 COVID cases in the country, we are not quite sure how the government plans to go forward. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is scheduled to address the nation at 10 a.m. tomorrow in what is expected to give greater clarity into what will happen going forward, whether the lockdown will be lifted. It's unlikely that the lockdown would be lifted, but whether there would be some staggered approach towards lifting it. Today in Government Matters, in this live episode, I have with me Moushumi Gupta, who closely tracks the government as well as the PMO, to talk about what we can expect from Modi's address tomorrow. Now, of course, we know there is a certain degree of speculation because only the Prime Minister knows what the Prime Minister does. But having spoken to several sources, Moushumi will be able to throw some light on what the Prime Minister is expected to say and what the government overall really is thinking about the situation. So do send in your questions. Some of you already have, but the rest of you, I'm hoping you would in the course of this conversation. Moushumi, what to expect tomorrow?
Ruhi, one thing is certain, though, there is no official statement from the government as it, but one thing is everybody is pretty much sure that the Prime Minister is going to announce an extension of the lockdown.
Right.
And in his meeting with the Chief Ministers day before yesterday, the Prime Minister mentioned as much that most of the states have sought an extension of the lockdown beyond April 14. And the likely scenario is that it would be extended by another 2 weeks, which is April 30th.
Right.
So that thing is certain. But beyond that, what kind of stuff would be allowed in the lockdown period, the kind of, everybody is talking about a graded implementation, what all would be there, that is a matter of speculation as of now, because there has been no official communication on that.
Right. In fact, Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal in a tweet even thanked Prime Minister Modi and said after the Chief Minister's video conference that thank you for extending the lockdown. So he pretty much gave us an insight into what is expecting. But Moushumi, will it be left to states to decide whether they want to follow a staggered approach? What kind of, as you were mentioning, graded lockdown could be there?
Another thing which is pretty much sure at this point of time, Ruhi, that few activities related to agriculture, farm sector activities, few manufacturing units, few sectors in the industry and manufacturing will be allowed to open. For instance, Home Secretary last night wrote to all the state chief secretaries saying that basically giving a direction to the state on how to go about it. So he reiterated that in MSME sectors, for instance, the small units, small industrial units which are into flour manufacturing, atta, dal, the workers working there should be allowed to reach their units.
Right.
He also said that where cold storage and warehouses, people who are employed there should be again allowed, the state government should ensure that they are given passes so that the workers don't face any difficulty in reaching these industries. So, if we go by that, indications are that small industrial units, small manufacturing units, agriculture related activities will be allowed, but it will be up to the state to decide on the extent of allowing these activities. For instance, Punjab, because it's the Rabi harvest season, so in rural areas where no COVID cases have been reported, there have been negligible coronavirus cases, the states, individual states can decide to relax many of the guidelines which are in place in urban areas, which has seen a huge surge in cases.
But Moushumi, before we go any further and I start taking questions, let's just do a quick recap of the PM's video conference interaction with chief ministers and what various chief ministers said. As you said, of course, there was a larger consensus that the lockdown should be extended. But what was the concern, or did some chief ministers want a graded approach and wanted to lift some of the restrictions?
Well, Ruhi, most of the chief ministers wanted the lockdown to be continued, but then I mean, some of the chief minister did want a graded approach. For instance, the Kerala chief minister, Punjab chief minister, they said in their interaction with the prime minister that certain economic activity should be allowed because the states are facing a huge financial crunch, and because everything is shut down, there is no economic activity. So, and also these states have a huge number of migrant workers there. So it would be very difficult for them to sustain if the industries, the manufacturing units do not open now in a limited way, of course, do not open. So there have been states who have in their interaction with the prime minister told them that the center should see to it that certain economic activity should be allowed. In fact, one of the empowered group, the government had set up, as you know, 11 empowered groups headed by secretaries. So one of the empowered groups had suggested that, had recommended that there should be a survey, there should be a vulnerable mapping of all the districts, and districts which have very few, and they had suggested 3 categories: red, orange, and green, depending on the number of cases. Red will be the code given to the districts which are hotspots. Then orange will be where not many cases have been reported, and green where you don't have any cases. So based on that, the states should be allowed to decide what kind of activities, economic activities, what kind of businesses should be allowed.
Now I was just going through, in fact, a lot of viewer questions have come in, so let me begin by taking them. Gokul wants to know, will it be another PR exercise like Thali Bajana, etc.? Well, we know the PM, the first one had Thali Bajana, the second one had Diya Jalana. So Moushumi, any more gimmicky statement expected?
Well, at this point of time, my guess is as good as yours, but it will be, I don't know, if anything of that would follow in the third interaction that the PM has, in the third address that the PM makes to the nation. But of course, he will lay down the guidelines of how the lockdown would be implemented. Would be implemented in the next 15 days.
Well, I suppose it's also a way for the PM to motivate people in the country, to keep them a little distracted and entertained. So could expect something else, but as Moushumi said, your guess is as good as ours. Sanjeev wants to know, will more hotspots be identified and the lockdown extended?
See, it's not up to the center to identify hotspots. It's the respective state. As the number of testing goes up and the number of cases goes up in any area, in any clusters, the respective state government decides that area, that XYZ area is a hotspot, depending on the number of cases there. So it's basically the states which will decide
what to do. So the next question is also related. It's from Suresh. Will it be a complete lockdown or only hotspots will be locked down? But I think we've already taken that.
It will be a graded way, and also one thing, Ruhi, that even the center has realized that it can't just shut down everything. And what is of concern to the center and what has set alarm bells ringing is a spate of incidents. In April 10th in Surat, if you remember, there were these daily wagers who created ruckus because fearing that the lockdown would be extended, and these laborers said that they don't have the money, they don't have anything to eat. Similarly, yesterday in Punjab, what happened? It's a law and order problem, of course, but there is also thinking going on in the government that if they don't extend the lockdown, if they don't allow certain activities to resume, it can result in a law and order problem elsewhere.
There would be a violent backlash.
India is not like US. It's a country of 1.3 billion where, there are a huge segment of people who are,
absolutely,
who are migrant
on the
laborers,
day-to-day wages.
And who are dependent on their day-to-day earnings. So you can't just shut everything and...
It's too complex and diverse a country to be able to do that for too long. Tilak has a question. Will airlines resume service?
As of now, there are no indications that airlines would resume function. In fact, the government has said that till April 30th, no commercial and passenger flights would be allowed to operate. Of course, airlines are using their services to, to carry essential commodities from one place to another, one state to another. But for other commercial and passenger services, the services are not yet operational, and till April 30th.
Well, Rizvi has a question. Will lockdown extend till May or further? Well, difficult to say, Moushumi, but...
Yeah, right now they are going with 2 weeks, which is April 30th. So on April 30th, I mean, a couple of days before that, they will decide on, I mean, depending on how the situation pans out, if the number, if they have been able, if there is not a huge surge in cases, they might decide to, you know,
ease things out.
Yeah, easing lockdown. As of now, one thing, I mean, the government has said that schools, colleges, educational institutes are going to remain shut till the end of June, and malls, cinema halls, they are going to be shut till, I mean, till far more time, I mean, beyond April also.
Right. I suppose anything that requires much greater proximity and which is not necessary, like malls and cinema halls, will have to be the last ones to open up. Schools anyway were going in for summer breaks, and most are, I think, conducting simulating classes in the internet. So that is a solution that has been found. GD Singh wants to know, why isn't the government ramping testing but making such announcements?
The government, the center said that they are going to, you know, increase the testing, but one thing that is coming in the way is the government had decided that, you know, they would allow this rapid testing kits, and which we are importing from China. But the problem that they are facing is that as of now, I mean, they have not been able to import the rapid testing kits. There are issues in China also. As in the stock that was to be imported to India, apparently, I mean, they have not been able to, I mean, send. So there is problem there. So that is another thing, Ruhi, that, you know, extending a lockdown is okay, but extending a lockdown will not alone be able to, you know, contain the spread of coronavirus. I mean, contain the outbreak. I mean, along with the lockdown, you need to also ramp up your testing, because only when you know, I mean, only when you do the testing, you will know how many people are affected with the virus. So it has to be, I mean, both of them have to go hand in hand.
Sanjeev has a question. Will all government offices resume work?
As of now, from today, most of the central government ministries have started functioning. In fact, central government ministries were functioning earlier also, Ruhi, in a limited way. All the secretaries were going to office, and I mean, as and when there were meetings, the other officers were also called in. But yeah, from today, all the ministers have started going to work. Many of them were working from home till now, so they have started going to work. Joint Secretary and our officers who have their own vehicles have started going to work from today, and also a certain number of grade C and D employees have also started going to work. But large scale, I mean,
it won't be back to normal.
Yeah, it won't be back to normal, because one has to understand that right now public transport is shut, and Ola, Uber, you are getting them, but they are very few and far between. So it would be difficult. I mean, unless and until you have some sort of public transport.
But just to talk about public transport, Moushumi, if I could just interrupt you, what is the possibility of public transport which are used individually, like say Olas or Ubers or auto rickshaws, being allowed to resume?
Ola and Uber taxi aggregator services, Ruhi, I think the government would allow in limited numbers. Similarly, I mean, nobody knows as of now, but there are talks in the government that maybe in limited number they would allow few public transport also to ply. Because I mean, if people have to come out, if employees have to, government employees have to go to their work, they would need, I mean, they would need some sort of, some way to commute. So it won't be like, I mean,
back to normal.
Yeah, back to normal. But yeah, maybe limited number of public transport would be allowed. But as of now, I mean, these are just again speculation.
So I'll take two last questions because we are running out of time. Kumar wants to know: will Modi talk about the US-India relation? Well, unlikely, right? This is not the platform for that.
It's not. It will be more about, you know, what lies ahead in the next 15 days, and maybe some words of, you know, motivation from the Prime Minister, urging people to stay at home, to follow the guidelines of the government, you know, not to step out. If you're stepping out, wear masks. So basically more of that, rather than, I mean,
in line with the previous
in line with
two
the previous
addresses. Mickey has a question: is it likely that the lockdown will be lifted for a short time and then imposed again? That's actually a question we've been getting in many of our government matters.
Yeah, so as of now, again, Ruhi, there is no clarity because, like you said, I mean, only the Prime Minister decides
what he does, right?
Yeah, what he does. But and also these things don't go to a cabinet for clearance. So whatever we are, I mean, discussing, whatever talks are happening in the government, at the most, I mean, this is the indication that the lockdown is going to be extended for 2 weeks in a graded way, but
the extent of which we will only know tomorrow once the Prime Minister talks.
Once the Prime Minister has a designation.
Right. Well, the lockdown in all likelihood will be extended, but in what form, in what shape is something that the Prime Minister will make clear tomorrow. But as we've discussed, given that over 9,000, there have been now over 9,000 COVID-19 positive cases in the country, the government would want to approach this cautiously, and in fact, various state governments have also said the lockdown should be extended, even though they have sought certain exemptions. Thank you so much for watching Government Matters and for sending in your questions. We'll be back with yet another episode tomorrow, but do subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter and like our Facebook page.